Translation is the communication of the meaning of a source language text by means of an equivalent target language text. The English language draws a terminological distinction. Under this distinction, translation can begin only after the appearance of writing within a language community. A translator always risks inadvertently introducing source language words, grammar, or syntax into the target language rendering. On the other hand, such spillovers have sometimes imported useful source language calques and loanwords that have enriched target languages. Translators, including early translators of sacred texts, have helped shape the very languages into which they have translated. Because of the laboriousness of the translation process, since the 1940s, efforts have been made, with varying degrees of success, to automate translation or to mechanically aid the human translator. More recently, the rise of the Internet has fostered a worldwide market for translation services and has facilitated language localization. The English word translation derives from the Latin word translatio, which comes from trans, across, plus fere, to carry, or to bring. Thus translatio is a carrying across, or a bringing across in this case, of a text from one language to another. Some Slavic languages and the Germanic languages plus deco. The West and East Slavic languages adopted the translatio pattern, whereas Russian and the South Slavic languages adopted the traductio pattern. The Romance languages, deriving directly from Latin, did not need to calque their equivalent words for translation. Instead, they simply adapted the second of the two alternative Latin words, traductio. The ancient Greek term for translation, metaphrasis. Metaphrase corresponds, in one of the more recent terminologies, to formal equivalence, and paraphrase, to dynamic equivalence. Strictly speaking, the concept of metaphrase, of word-for-word translation, is an imperfect concept, because a given word in a given language often carries more than one meaning, and because a similar given meaning may often be represented in a given language by more than one word. Nevertheless, metaphrase and paraphrase may be useful as ideal concepts that mark the extremes in the spectrum of possible approaches to translation. Discussions of the theory and practice of translation reach back into antiquity and show remarkable continuities. The ancient Greeks distinguished between metaphrase and paraphrase. This distinction was adopted by English poet and translator John Dryden, who described translation as the judicious blending of these two modes of phrasing when selecting, in the target language, counterparts or equivalents for the expressions used in the source language. When appear literally graceful, it were an injury to the author that they should be changed. But since what is beautiful in one is often barbarous, nay sometimes nonsense, in another, it would be unreasonable to limit a translator to the narrow compass of his author's words. 'Tis enough if he choose out some expression which does not vitiate the sense. Dryden cautioned, however, against the license of imitation, i.e., of adapted translation. When a painter copies from the life, he has no privilege to alter features and lineaments. This general formulation of the central concept of translation, equivalence, is as adequate as any that has been proposed since Cicero and Horace, who, in 1st century BCE Rome, famously and literally cautioned against translating, word for word. Despite occasional theoretical diversity, the actual practice of translation has hardly changed since antiquity, except for some extreme metaphrases in the early Christian period and the Middle Ages, and adapters in various periods. Translators have generally shown prudent flexibility in seeking equivalents, literal, where possible, paraphrastic where necessary, for the original meaning and other crucial values, as determined from context. In general, translators have sought to preserve the context itself by reproducing the original order of semimes, and hence word order, when necessary, reinterpreting the actual grammatical structure. For example, by shifting from active to passive voice, or vice versa. The grammatical differences between fixed word order languages characteristics of a text source language are adjusted to the syntactic requirements of the target language. When a target language has lacked terms that are found in a source language, translators have borrowed those terms, thereby enriching the target language, thanks in great measure to the exchange of calques and loanwords between languages, and to their importation from other languages. There are few concepts that are untranslatable among the modern European languages. A greater problem, however, is translating terms relating to cultural concepts that have no equivalent in the target language. For full comprehension,